Hello, I'm Pedro Dias, and this is SEO in 2023.
Pedro, what's your number one SEO tip for 2023?
Oh boy. Given the recent Google updates, and it kind of lines up with what I already had in mind, it would be like focused on being selective regarding on terms of quality that you put out. SEOs are gonna be more, scrutinizing more the kind of pages that they are creating, the kind of content that they are producing, and probably not so much focuses, or without taking, but the focus will not be increased on the technical side as much as it will be on the qualitative side of things. And this pairs up nicely with the last conversations that we've been having around UX and all the areas that surround UX, because in the end, and if you look at Peter Morville's UX honeycomb, you'll see that at the center is something called value. It's valuable, and it's surrounded by all the other disciplines that we have already discussed, like usability, findability, and desirability, and anything else that surrounds it. And to be able to create value, you need to hit all of those areas. Otherwise, you will just leave stuff on the table, and that's, I think, where SEOs will be kind of focusing, and they will be probably exploring areas within the UX realm.
So let's dive into your initial statement, be selective, and what that really means in practice. So you mentioned pages and content there as well. Being selective in pages, what does that mean? Does that mean that you shouldn't publish a page unless it's absolutely necessary, or something else?
Well, more or less. Probably people will be more mindful before they go about and say, okay, let's create pages for this or for that. And they will make sure that what they want to put on those pages is to some extent like valuable and helpful, because that's, Google is kind of hinting people that that's what they want on their index. Google is being also selective on what they want to index. In the early days of SEO, we would be on the modus operandi of like discoverability and discover all the content, index everything, because the web was very new and websites were less kind of accessible. We were using technologies that kind of were like wouldn't obey conventions, and so now we have a more spread kind of use of good technologies, because we know that some things should obey certain criteria for development, and it's hard today to launch a website that is not minimally optimized in some way. That wouldn't happen in the old days. You would just launch a website and you'd have to worry a lot about if you're going to be findable and if search engines would going to be able to extract information from your technologies. Nowadays, that's not so on your top of your mind anymore. You launch a website and it's already like half baked into what you need to do. So, and because of this, search engines can start to be more picky regarding what they select to be indexed and ranked. Before search engines they would crawl everything, and they would, for example, in the old days, Google would have different indexes where they would index stuff that they would say people search quite often, an index where they would throw stuff that they would say people don't search this stuff as much, but we will just keep it in there just in case. So I think we are turning to a stage where search engines are saying we don't even need to index this because we know that it's not going to be useful for anyone. So people are going to be more mindful about, I'm going to invest money and put an effort on producing something. I might as well make sure that it's going to be worthy of being like crawled, and index is going to come back to me and create some value to me as a business.
Understood.
So I think that's going to be the focus, where SEOs are going to be with their minds more switched into the qualitative side of things and assessing is this page valuable? Is this technology that I'm using that's producing all these pages on a on a mass scale actually like working as it should be working? Can I improve it in terms of that those pages are better quality? So all the quality bells and whistles, I think it's going to be the most of the SEO focus on next year.
So what you're essentially saying is that most CMSs nowadays, something like WordPress, will have really decent SEO baked in, and the difference between you and a competitor is not going to be some plugin that's going to give you slightly more enhanced SEO. It's going to be a much more effective, more relevant, more appealing piece of content to the target consumer compared with your competitors.
Yeah, we can already see that. Like if you look at WordPress, like even if you install WordPress without any plugins, you can easily have like friendly URLs, which in the old days were like something hard to do because you'd have to kind of do rewrites on your server and configure your Apache and the htaccess and whatever to output those friendly URLs. Nowadays it's out of the box. So as technologies progress, WordPress has like sitemaps built in already almost. You don't even need like almost a plugin to generate them anymore. So we are, tearing down the technical hurdles that would prevent something to be technically correct. And Google said that they would never prefer anything technically correct over something that's qualitatively better. So they will always like prefer something that it's as a higher quality over something that is technically correct. Otherwise, spam at scale would work a lot more than it does. It still does. You still can exploit some holes in Google's algorithms, but not as you could do in the old days. So yes, and I think this drives the SEO mind also to the side of tearing down or kind of being a bit more critical of their own pages and looking at their own sites and saying, maybe I could add some more value to this page because this is not good enough. And it's not necessarily stuff like more text or more words or it's more about, does this help the user accomplish the task that I'm putting this page out for? Because if you think about a website, every page should have a purpose. It should fulfill a purpose. Even the about page has a purpose. Like it has a purpose of presenting the people that are behind the website or whatever to the user. And if you think about the purpose of every page, you should make sure that it's accomplished. Otherwise, it falls short of it, no matter how technically sane or well implemented it is.
So you mentioned there, does this content help the user? How do we measure if it helps the user?
Well, that's another thing that SEOs are going to be discovering, that probably they should not look as much as chasing algorithms. They should probably speak to their user base more. And it's like, I know that a lot of big companies have UX teams inside, and UX teams usually are split into people that do UX studies, and they kind of look at the user journey and then kind of think about how the user experience spans around that. And there are people that do UX research, and these people kind of interview other people. They kind of call people in to a video interview and they ask them, what do you think our website lacks? Is it hard to navigate on our website? Which website do you prefer? So I think SEOs should actually team up more with UX research folks, or try to understand more of who are their users, so they can more easily kind of spot or define what their users want to do, what is success for the happiness of their users, or for what users want to accomplish on their websites. Because sometimes you just launch a web page and we assume a lot of stuff. We assume that users have the same kind of general culture that we have, and they are going to understand everything that we put on our pages, because we are, it cannot be more simple than what I'm already putting. Sometimes it can. It just, you are kind of biased in your own way because you learned to interpret your world in one way because you have a certain savviness for technology or for whatever you know, and not everyone is at the same level that you are. So you need to understand more how the distribution on how your user base is literate about the topic that you are talking about. So and that can only be done by speaking to your users, doing some kind of surveys to understand what your users, what page your users are, if they're happy or unhappy, and so on. So yeah,
I used to be a fan of using the website usertesting.com, where people could record like short videos on their first experience of using a website. But I guess you're not really talking about people experiencing a website for the first time. You're actually talking about people who are existing users or customers of that business. Is that correct?
Yeah. And accomplishing specific tasks. Think yourself as a business and, split down which tasks do you want your users to accomplish within your business. So if you are like a credit kind of, a bank or a credit card business, you want your users to be able to kind of really distinguish the benefits of the credit lines or cards that you are offering. So you need to kind of to understand how literate are people in that area of understanding credit. Are they kind of advanced users, like investing users, or they're like users that have no idea how inflation works or how interest works? So you need to kind of assess the baseline and knowledge of your users and put out the content accordingly. Because the mistake that SEOs do usually is like, okay, I'm going to be the most complete that I can. I'm going to write this page with 7,000 words, which is going to cover from how the world was created until the evolution of the species and we're traveling to space. And sometimes the user just wants how the wheel was invented. And you created a whole page that has a lot of fluff around that the user doesn't need, because they just want the part that where the wheel was invented, and you are giving them the content. Here is everything. You find it. No, it should be the other way around. You should be delivering to the user what they want.
Absolutely. I mean, countless times I've been on a search engine looking for a specific query and an answer to that, and then going to a web page, there's so much text in there, can't find it, off again, onto another web page instead.
That's where we got complaining about recipe websites, right? You kind of try to find a recipe on the internet, and you land on this website that tells you
the history of the piece of food instead.
Yes, exactly. Oh, these lemons from Sicily were created under this, magnificent, sun that, and you don't want this. You just want the recipe.
Yeah. So you mentioned UX teams and UX research quite a bit there. You also mentioned usability earlier. Is usability interchangeable with UX, or what's the difference between them both?
So usability is inside UX. UX oversees everything. UX is how users experience something. The perception that users have overall over how easy it is to use your website, how pretty it is, how valuable it is to me, how desirable how it is to me. So UX is a much broader area. UX exists even outside the digital world. So it's something that permeates digital and non-digital realms. Usability is more like defining on how usable something is. Like, is it intuitive for me to get into your website and I automatically understand that this is a menu, this is a search box, this is like a drop down, this is a form that can be submitted without me thinking too much. And it taps on that premise that don't make me think, that Stephen Craig published a book about. So usability is a much more tangible thing. You could say that usability is a tactic and UX is a strategy. So it's a broader thing.
You've shared what SEO should be doing in 2023, so now let's talk about what SEO shouldn't be doing. So what's something that's seductive in terms of time, but ultimately counterproductive? Something that SEO shouldn't be doing in 2023?
So probably in being worried about, how long is the content that on my website? Is it not long enough? Is it long enough? And assuming that length of content and being useful is just like adding more stuff to a page. All these misconceptions that stem from chasing Google's algorithms. I think it's a bit counterproductive, just wasting 90%. So every time I go into Twitter, I see a tweet about how Google's algorithms and how this should be, people should be analyzing how, the ups and downs of this algorithm. And sometimes this is so counterproductive, and it kind of takes your time of something that it's really obvious. And you know already where Google is heading, where Google is going, which is, the happiness of your users. So if you speak to your users instead of chasing Google, you'd probably be in a much better position because you'd be on par with what Google is after. So I'm not saying switch your SEO mindset off. No, I mean, by all means, keep yourself informed. Just don't, go overboard and kind of put the most of your time towards over-analyzing Google algorithms and put most of your time towards analyzing your users and speaking to your users and tapping into all these UX areas that are going to be much more helpful.
Pedro Dias is head of organic growth at Autovia, and you can find him over at pedrodias.net. Pedro, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2023.
Thanks for having me, David.
Get your copy of SEO in 2023, the book, over at SEOin2023.com.